Welcome to the Gold Coast Smart Real Estate Podcast. I'm Brad Scott, here to help you make smart moves in the Gold Coast property market. Whether you're thinking of buying, selling, or just staying updated, we deep dive into everything you need to know, from our market insights to our unique open offers method of sale, a blend of auction and private treaty to give you the best of both worlds. Let's jump in.
Hello everyone, Adam Bell here, back with another episode of the Smart Real Estate Podcast. Now today we're tackling a question that comes up all the time. I'd imagine this is pretty common. You know, should you sell your home before buying your next one, or vice versa? What happens when you're wanting to buy and you haven't sold? So it's a big decision, and the right answer often depends on, the market and your personal situation. So to help unpack it, we've got Brad Scott from Smart Real Estate, the principal of Smart Real Estate, joining us again in the studio. Brad, great to have you here.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, let's dig into the pros and cons and help people make smarter decisions. All right, so what are the biggest advantages of selling before buying, especially in a market, like we have here on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, so generally we will always recommend to clients to sell first, mainly because you're going to know exactly how much money you've got to go shopping with.
Yep.
So that's probably the biggest thing. We find probably most people do it vice versa. So most people will want to buy first and then go and sell after they've found the right property. The only problem with that scenario is, and I say to clients all the time, is, you'll be shopping for the right property. You're searching for months and months and months, and you're not in a position to buy. So they're generally going to have to put in clauses such as subject to sale. So when they're doing that, they're what we term a weak buyer on terms. So
right.
You want strong buyers, strong terms, cash unconditional is the best. Then subject to pest and building and finance is sort of your average sort of buyer.
Sure.
Your subject to sale is the weakest. So
explain that to me in a bit of detail. What does subject to sale actually mean?
Essentially that. So they've got to sell their property in order to have the money to buy the next one. So it's kind of a domino effect. So the problem with that is if, we accept that offer and you don't sell your property, our client, the seller, won't be able to sell their property. So it's like a domino effect. So they're usually seen as a higher risk offer, and it's commensurate with the price. So if you put a subject to sale clause in, you need to offer a higher price in order to secure the same property compared to somebody who's, say, cash unconditional, very low risk, done deal.
Can happen straight away.
They can come in much more competitive on price and secure the property. So that's why we say to sellers, even if you do find the right property, then you put in your offer subject to sale, you might not get it. So whereas if we get your house sold first, put it on the market, then what we would suggest is probably doing a longer settlement.
Yep.
So sell your property, get a contract, wait till it becomes unconditional, so it's past pest and building and finance.
Yep.
That's when you start going shopping. You know exactly how much money you've got. It's just basically waiting for settlement. Then when you go and make an offer on another property to buy, you will put that subject to sale clause in there, but there are also varying types of subject to sale.
Meaning we've already got it under contract.
Yeah, so when I get a buyer and they say I'm subject to sale, and I say, okay, well, where are you in the journey?
Yep.
Have you selected an agent? They say no. I'm like, okay, you're all like way back here.
Yeah.
If they say, oh, we've got an agent, we've been on the market, we've got a contract, it's now unconditional, I say, okay, wow. Like, we're going to treat
totally
you
different, isn't it?
Totally different perspective. Yep. And that buyer who's got the contract, it's unconditional, we treat them like a cash buyer. So they go from being the weakest type of buyer to the strongest type of buyer. Therefore, commensurately, they can offer a lower price to secure that property because it's a very strong termed offer.
Sure.
So that's something we talked about clients all the time is get your house sold.
Or at least get it unconditional. Yep.
Yeah, get it sold, get it unconditional. Instead of the problem is people worry about being homeless and there not being enough time to find the right property.
Well, that was going to be, this is a balancing act, isn't it? And, it's not a one size fits all, but because you say, get to that unconditional, spot.
Yep.
However, like that was instantly into my mind. Well, what if I don't find the property I want to buy in time? Well, you're going to have to look at a short-term rental or something like that. Aren't you? Is that what usually happens?
Yeah, generally. So what we'll usually recommend is rather than doing the standard 30-day settlement, do a 90-day settlement. So give yourself time to find the right property, whether it be for sale or for rent.
Yep.
If you're moving to a new area, sometimes it's not a bad idea to rent somewhere. So you get a bit of a feel for the area, street, the suburb. Because sometimes you might go and buy somewhere, you live there for 12 months and you hate the neighbours, you hate the area, and then you have to sell again. A lot of costs involved in changing. So you want to be settled and find that right property. On the flip side too, some people won't rent. They think rent money's dead money, so they'll always rebuy. That's fine. Just do that longer settlement. Know how much cash you've got, and then make that. I say to clients all the time, they say, "Oh, Brad, there's nothing out there. There's nothing for sale." And I'm like, "How many did you go and look at last Saturday?" And they say, "Well, none. But we've seen everything on the internet, Brad." And I say, "Well, look, when you've got a deadline and you have to find somewhere by a certain time period, and you jump in the car and go and look at 10 on Saturday, 10 on Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, you'll get a really good feel for what's out there, and you will make a decision because you have to make a decision."
Yep.
It's a very different mindset to somebody who's just, looking at Real Estate Review and just flicking through. It's like flicking through the paper. When you got a deadline, you got that motivation to find, you will find something.
That's it.
So
a bit like, if you're needing a job, isn't it? I mean, if you've got a job and you're just looking around, there's no urgency, and however, ain't got no income coming in, you'll start. Well, I'll take that one.
That's it.
Yeah. So.
And I think when people are not in the right mindset, like they have to find somewhere, they're looking for the perfect property that ticks 100% of the boxes.
Yeah.
And I say to clients, it's like finding the perfect wife or the perfect husband. They don't exist.
Don't start me on that one.
So if it ticks 70-80% of the boxes, usually that's sufficient. So you're not going to tick all the boxes. You just got to tick the majority. And again, when you got that motivation, it's like nobody's perfect. No house is perfect. But you will find a house that you'll be very happy in.
Sure. Now, before I move on to a few other different subjects, maybe like bridging finance or things like that, just want to just talk this through a little bit again on the Gold Coast market in particular. Now, we did an episode recently and we talked about, what this high-flying market that we've just come off and that it is looking like that, there are signals that it's starting to turn. How does this play a role in what we're talking about here about, buying first or selling first? With where the market is right now, what factors are at play with making that decision?
Yeah, so right now what we're starting to see is there's a lot more properties hitting the market, so supply is increasing. Therefore, buyers have more options, more choice. So days on market are sort of blowing out a little bit.
They are starting to,
and they're starting to
Yep.
take more time to sell a property. I guess that's looking at the averages and sort of from the data.
Sure.
Personally, in our agency, we're actually finding one of the things we've found in the last few months is buyers are being quite selective quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So we normally do a 3-week campaign. We've actually shortened that down to a 2-week campaign now,
right?
Which is working well because we were finding that there were too many buyers. Now that they've got more options,
if they might go with something else. If it's on market,
we were
too
losing
long.
quite a few buyers in that 3rd week, so we had to sort of pivot and adjust. And now we're bringing it back to 2 weeks. So we're just doing like 2 Saturday open homes, getting them all in there.
Up it goes,
and it's sold
on open offers, which we've talked about. If this is your first episode and you haven't heard about open offers, go and have a listen to a few of our earlier episodes. That you don't want to miss them. Great. So, and also, I guess with what you're saying there, because having and having your own property at an unconditional contract would have been probably a lot more important in the market we've just come off, where things were selling, like hotcakes. If you back at that market, I gather if you weren't cash unconditional or had a unconditional contract on your own, you were probably going to miss out.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's just before, especially in 2024, there was such a shortage of supply of properties for sale on the Gold Coast. Buyers were prepared to wait and hang around. So, but now as we're seeing supply increasing, we're just starting to see people being a bit more decisive, quicker. It's funny because they're not, I guess, paying. They're not they don't have that fear of missing out as much
Sure.
as what they did.
Yeah.
So they're sort of like just standing back a little bit. They're sort of considering all their options. They're still making offers, which is good, but they're more, they're just looking at all their options. There's a lot more stock for them to look at.
Yep.
So if they find another deal that comes on the market next week, they'll pull out and jump on that one. So
Sure.
that's where we've just got to be careful in that sense.
Absolutely. All right. Now, bridging finance. In the scenario that we're talking about, this balancing act of sell first, buy first, trying to get it as right as you possibly can, where does bridging finance fit into that? Oh, actually, there might be some listeners out there who don't know what bridging finance is.
Yep.
Can you explain bridging finance and where it fits in?
Yeah, so bridging finance essentially is just finance that helps you get from one property to the next. In simple terms, it's generally short-term lending.
Sure.
So you want to avoid it. That's the
the
long and short.
First bit of good advice there. Avoid it if you possibly can.
Avoid it if you can, because you're taking a large sum of money, and because it is short-term lending,
The rates are going to be
are very high. Like you're paying like credit card type rates.
Wow.
Probably not quite that high, but might be double or triple what you're paying on your home loan.
Yep.
Because it's only for a short term. So the downside is, like my mother, she sold her property, and then she was on. So she purchased first.
Yep.
Then she was on bridging finance until she sold. Now she was down in Victoria, in a rural area. Mm-hmm. It ended up taking her about 12 months to sell that property, and she lost, I think it was like $150,000, $200,000 because of the amount of time it took to sell that property.
Wow.
So that's one of the big risks. If you buy first and you go on to bridging finance, you can lose a lot of equity and a lot of money quite quickly. You really got to, it literally is just for like 1 month. You really don't want to be on it for more than a month. I call it kneecapping rates. It's like borrowing. It's like it's legal.
Sharks.
Yeah, it's like loan sharks. And you
So
just
avoid it all.
avoid it all.
Can you give me an example where you would do it? Maybe you can't. I'm just interested to know.
Well, it's for again, you have people who are worried about being homeless and nowhere to go, so they will generally want to buy first, and then they sell. And that the difference between when they buy and sell, they need that bridging finance to overcome those two transactions. So I guess where people don't take our advice and they insist on buying first, again, you got to make sure you're going. It's not as prevalent where your days on market is lower. Definitely, like if you're in a rural area where I feel like you're on Mount Tamborine, like they have significantly higher days on market. They can take 3 to 6 months, 12 months sometimes, quite regularly up there. But if you're in a suburban area, we're averaging 14 days on market at the moment, so it's not as big of an issue because you're not going to be on bridging finance for months and months and months. But any situation where you may be potentially still for sale after purchasing for more than 2 months, you would probably want to avoid. Again, that's why it's always best to sell first. Do a longer settlement, you avoid the need of bridging finance.
But look, even in you saying that, Brad, it's coming to my mind that if you are weighing up risks of this, and you are that person who wants to or has found that perfect property that you want to buy, and crap, I haven't sold, or I'm not even in a position to yet. You're probably far better to be renting for a little bit of time. The costs involved in that versus the risk of what could go wrong.
Yeah, the risk of
in bridging finance.
Yeah, bridging finance is going to substantially be much more expensive than renting somewhere short term. Yeah. Even if there's websites like Stays that do 1 and 3 month holiday rentals. Yep. One of the other strategies too, I say to clients is, look, let's get you sold first. And they say, oh, what if we don't find somewhere, Brad? And I say, well, look, you can actually have a stay. We've had clients who actually go and stay on the beach.
Yeah, live in surface.
Have a holiday for a month.
Yep.
Have the waves rolling in, walk on the beach, just have a bit of a break, between properties rather than moving from one to another. Have a month off, have a bit of a staycation. You can still work and everything like that.
Because those, you're looking at them being fully furnished and things, and so all you got to do is pack up your gear and get it all out into storage for, for that period of time.
We have removers that will help and put it all into a storage container for them. Doesn't cost that much, and then they go and have a bit of a staycation, and then the removalists will take it all out of storage and move it to the new house a month later or whenever it be.
Yep.
So we went through it personally too. So we sold our property, and then the wife was like, do we find the right property first and then do we sell? I said no. I said we're selling first. Then when we're unconditional, then we'll go shopping. So we sold our property. We ended up probably getting about 200,000 more than I was expecting.
Yep.
Which was great. So that allowed us to then also look at a different type of property. So it might be the case where, I thought it was worth X, but we got 200,000 more. We were then starting to look at waterfront properties, and we were looking at bigger houses, with theatre rooms and pools.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll come back to the very first thing you said in this podcast is what you've got to spend. And I love the example you're giving here. Wow, you've just sold yours for far more than you thought. Suddenly you're looking at something totally different than you would have been.
And it can also work on the flip side where, sometimes we've got sellers who think their house is worth, of course, $3 million and it's really only worth 2.5.
Can I ask you overall, because this is interesting, as an average overall, when you get new listings all the time, overall, do most sellers, in your experience, when you first say to them, this is what I think it's worth, or however that conversation goes, overall, are they expecting more or less in your experience over how many years you've been doing this?
99% of the time, they want more.
I would have thought so.
So there's an old saying in real estate, if the seller tells you a price and it's less than you've expected, you've stuffed it up.
Yep.
So 99% of the times, everyone will have a expectation of price. Actually, one rule that's pretty accurate is that the sellers will generally want almost exactly 10% too much.
Really?
Yeah. So
okay. That's interesting.
I'll usually ask clients, what price they would like to achieve or what's their dream price. They might say, 1.5 million, say. So then if I sort of look at it and I'll do my appraisal and say, okay, realistically, it's probably 1.3 to 1.4. If you get 1.5, take off 150,000, you're at 1.35. So it'll be within that band so I can work with that person. If they say they want 20 or 30% too much, I'll generally decline that business. Very, very occasionally you'll have somebody who's realistic and think it's in the band that it should probably be selling for.
Yep.
So, but 99% of people, unfortunately, in behavioural economics, they actually call it the endowment effect.
Right.
I won't go into that right now, but it's just human behaviour. We all think our house is the best.
Of course.
We all think our house is worth more. And like years ago, I actually had this lady. She was a pink lady, and it was crazy. It was, she had this house and everything was pink. One of these she was a Barbie, loves Barbie. She got a pink car. She got a pink house, got the pink kitchen. It was terrible. It was the most horrid thing I've ever seen. I was like, oh, how am I going to sell this? And this lady genuinely thought her house was worth an extra $200,000 or $300,000 because it was pink.
When really it's probably dropped that amount.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And it was very hard to convey that to her because she was obviously very emotional about it. And I said, here's some other properties. And she was sort of saying, yeah, but they haven't got pink kitchens, Brad. And I said, no, they don't.
That's
so
hilarious.
Just got to factor that in. But yeah, you hear some great stories in real estate.
Sure. All right. So, look, back to what we're talking about here in terms of, managing that balancing act, buying or selling first. I gather this becomes a bit emotional for some people at times. Have you seen a bit of that? And how do you help when it comes to balancing those emotions? Because it would be quite stressful.
Yeah, look, it is very stressful and it's very emotional. Probably the biggest piece of advice I can say is generally business people are more decisive and they can look at it without the emotion.
They're used to making more financial decisions.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, it is a house, it is a home, especially if you've got somebody who's living in the property, they're more emotional about it because there's memories and the kids have grown up there and stuff like that. So that's a little bit more of an emotional journey and that's where picking the right agent can help you sort of get from point A to point B and being sold. Whereas an investor's usually less emotional. They're more business-like. It's an asset. They've got to get it sold like a share. nobody gets really emotional about their BHP shares.
No,
It's
they
just
don't,
an
isn't
asset.
it? Yep.
It gets to a certain price and they sell it.
Yep.
So, and that's the thing is like at the moment I'm helping a lady. She's a single mum, lovely lady, but she's very, every day she's calling me. She's like, "Oh, I'm distraught, Brad." And she's got a few issues she's working through with Body Corporate. So we're there as a bit of to sort of help get through this process. And she's freaking out almost on a daily basis. And I've sort of got to just give her that confidence, have that conversation, bring her back to reality and say, look, it's not the end of the world. All we need to do is A, B, and C, and we'll get the property on the market and you'll move on from this, and that weight will be lifted off your shoulders. And that's what good agents do.
Perfect. All right, sum this up for me, Brad. That the entire episode, I come to you and I say, right, I'm ready. I've got a house I want to sell. I want to find a new home. Brad, do I buy or sell first?
Sell.
Okay. Why?
Always sell, because then, like we've discussed, you're going to know how much you've got to spend. You avoid bridging finance, and it's going to allow you to make a more decisive decision, and you're going to be in a better position to buy your dream home, and you're going to have a better chance of getting it accepted at a lower price.
Okay, so to sum up, sell first and avoid bridging finance.
At all costs.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, look, thanks for tuning in, everyone. A big shout out to Brad sharing his tips and strategies on managing this sell before you buy balance. Hopefully today's chat, gives you more clarity if you are facing this decision, which, I would say 90% of people looking at real estate are. So now, and if you've got any questions or need guidance, please reach out to Brad and his team at Smart Real Estate. They are just a phone call away. Visit them at their website, www.smartrealestate.com.au. And as always, please hit that subscribe button, jump in so you don't miss any more of our episodes. Give us a 5-star rating, and take care, and we will see you at the next episode. Thanks once again, Brad.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for tuning into the Gold Coast Smart Real Estate Podcast. Remember, if you're thinking of selling, be smart. Explore your options and consider the power of open offers method of sale to maximize your result. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found today's insights helpful, feel free to share with a friend. Until next time, happy house hunting.